Welcome to another episode of our WCW Rewatch. Today, very exciting, our first pay-per-view. It's Fall Brawl from Asheville, North Carolina. Now, this is big, okay, because not only is it Asheville, North Carolina in the 90s, which is like wrestling mecca, but it's Fall Brawl, which is a fun pay-per-view with the WarGames, the double steel cage. We also get the pseudo culmination of Hogan and the Dungeon of Doom. And also, like I've said before, this is a big deal because up until now, Nitro for us is an hour-long show. So you really only see like one or two people. You don't really see tag teams. You don't really see the other wrestlers or the other storylines. But in a 3-hour fleshed-out pay-per-view with a huge multi-member tag match at the end of it, like you're going to see a lot of people you have not seen before. And after this pay-per-view, theoretically, we will start new storylines and we'll all kind of be caught up. So let's start the show. First things first, we're starting with Heenan and Schiavone. So this is different. Nitro so far has been Heenan, Bischoff, and Mongo. So we go straight to Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan for this show, and they are fantastic together. Heenan is incredible, and Schiavone is one of my favorites too. The first thing they mention is the Giant running over Hogan's motorcycle in his monster truck. Now this is kind of weird because up until now we have not seen the Giant. We don't even know who he is. So the fact that we know that Hogan is taking on the Dungeon of Doom, but we have no clue who the Giant is. And if the Giant is running over his motorcycle and the Giant is in the Dungeon of Doom, why the hell isn't he in the match, right? So a little bit of confusion there. It's also interesting, at this point, they are referring to the Giant as a direct descendant of Andre the Giant. And Hogan in his promos talks about how he feels Andre whenever he's dealing with the Giant. The Giant wears the singlet. And this is kind of hinted at, that he's either a son or a descendant or maybe even a reincarnation of Andre. This is later kind of dropped, and the Giant just becomes his own character. He loses the biological connection to Andre, but at this point it's still heavily hinted at that he's got some kind of connection to Andre, which is fueling kind of this rage from the Giant to Hogan. The opening match is Flying Brian versus Johnny B. Bad, a.k.a. Mark Marrow. Very different version of Mark Marrow. Johnny B. Bad is kind of like a little Richie kind of looking character. A lot of pomp and circumstance. He's got confetti. He's got a cape. I think he's wearing quite a bit of makeup. He is so different than the Mark Marrow that we know in WWF and the boxing kind of guy. But Michael Buffer's out here. This is a huge deal. This is crazy. This is the opening match, and we are going full on main event announcements with Buffer. They're not pinching any pennies at Fall Brawl, I'll tell you that much. Johnny B. Bad is if this show is 3 hours, it could have been 2.5 hours if it wasn't for Johnny B. Bad. He is going post to post. He is shooting confetti. He is waving to the crowd. This is his moment right here. Now, as the match is about to happen, Buffer lets us know that the winner of this match does get a U.S. title match against Sting. So right there, like we talked about before, we're already kind of building these future storylines. We're building stuff to look forward to. So Johnny B. Bad versus Flying Brian, and the winner gets Sting. It's a good match so far, but it's a little different than the openers we've seen before. The openers before have been very fast-paced. It's been very kind of hard-hitting action immediately to kind of get the crowd hyped. This is much slower of a pace, and this is much more rest holds, and this kind of has the feeling of more of a third or fourth kind of match on the card. I don't know if it's just a lot of faith in Flying Brian, because Pillman did open the debut Nitro, so maybe it's just that's his slot, but this is much less of that in-your-face, high-flying action. There's an interesting sequence here where Johnny B. Bad hits a reverse windmill backbreaker and then immediately slaps on a rest hold and decides to work the leg. Schiavone mentions the match has a 20-minute time limit. Now, I must have missed that whenever Johnny B. Bad was shooting confetti into every single square foot of the arena, but this is a time limit match. Very Asheville, very North Carolina. Huge reverse drop kick from Pillman as Johnny B. Bad goes for a top rope maneuver. 3 minutes left. Johnny B. Bad hits a power bomb into a 2. Pillman hits a tombstone pile driver into a 2 count as well. Somewhere the Undertaker cries. Johnny B. Bad hits the Tutti Frutti. Tony Schiavone called it that, not me. Okay, I didn't make up the name for it, which is really just kind of a left hook, which kind of shows that boxing pedigree that Mero has. I don't know if they hint at it before, but they certainly haven't hinted at the Golden Gloves background of Mark Mero in real life, but I would assume that's where that move came from. Pillman is under the ropes, so the ref stops the count, but Johnny B. Bad thinks he won, so we have some shenanigans here. Pillman then hits a flying clothesline and goes for the cover. Now, this moment is jacked up. Now, you can imagine how hard this is to do at this time of, like, production and all of that, but Pillman goes for the cover. Schiavone is counting the cover while the countdown is happening, while the cover is happening.
Flying up top! 7. He covers it. 6, 2, and Bad's out.
He won't get him. A draw.
There's so many numbers and so much math happening. I don't know what's right. I don't know if the clock is ahead or if the pin is going to happen. It's just numbers everywhere. I don't know what the hell is going on here, but it goes into nothing. It goes into where the time runs out. We do not have a winner. Now it comes out that Nick Patrick lets the world know that we are going to sudden death. And I was thinking about this when watching the match. That means it's just a regular match. Like, the only difference in a time limit draw with sudden death and a regular match is this announcement. That's it. Like, a regular match is theoretically a sudden death match. So kind of takes I've never thought about it like that, but it kind of takes the wind out of the sails of the time limit draw being announced. I mean, this is crazy. Like, we're in overtime, okay? And we're in another rest hold. Like, this has already been so long. This is the opening match. And it's been easy 30 plus minutes if you factor in the confetti and you factor in the introductions and all the stuff with Buffer. So just kind of crazy booking here where you go, start the pay-per-view, Buffer comes out, all the pomp and circumstance, the introductions, boom, rest hold, boom, sudden death, boom, we're back into overtime, and now we're back into a rest hold. Good news, we're out of the rest hold, and we are into another rest hold. No lie, this match might have the most counts ever in history of wrestling. Someone has to go back and check how many times Nick Patrick has counted. I mean, this has been a ton of near falls and whatever else. And we are 37 minutes so far into the show. 37 minutes. Like, that is a long time for two main eventers. Johnny B. Bad and Brian Pillman going 40 minutes to open the pay-per-view is nuts. Johnny B. Bad and Pillman hit a double crossbody thing. B. Bad goes to the cover and gets the win. The place actually explodes, probably because the match is over. So 40 minutes, and Johnny B. Bad gets the win, which means Johnny B. Bad will be facing Sting soon for the U.S. title. Heenan is at his absolute best all night.
But right now,
Same to you, kid.
Mean Genes with Ric Flair. So the Ric Flair Arn Anderson rivalry or this whole thing, like, I know how much the Four Horsemen were a big deal, and I know how big of a relationship, Arn and Ric Flair have, but this setup is kind of weird because it's not for a title, and they seem to like each other. Like, every time Flair is talking about Arn, he talks about how much he loves him. He talks about how great he is. Every time Arn is talking about Flair, he talks about how much he loves him. So it's kind of weird. Like, it kind of doesn't have the bite. Now, obviously, if you are a 10-year, 15-year watcher of the Horsemen, and it might be a different story. But I will say this promo was incredible from Flair. I mean, this is some poetry. Flair's delivery, what he's saying about greatness and all that, is just unbelievable. Flair is the man. Next up, we have Cobra versus Pitbull Pittman. This is WCW 90s wrestling at its finest. Very thematic. I love wrestlers that have a theme. These two guys' themes, pretty simple. One is a special forces military guy, and the other guy is an army ranger, basically. And they don't like each other because there's two military characters and there's only room for one of them. My favorite military-themed wrestler of all time, obviously, is Major Guns. Pivotal in my childhood. So Pillman is a no-show, and some corporal or something comes up and goes to the ring. Cobra is jawing back and forth with this hombre, while we see Pillman rappelling from the rafters. Insane spot. Such a cool spot. Pillman rappels down, army crawls across both rings, and attacks Cobra. Super, super cool to watch. A very cool spot. It seems hokey, sounds hokey, very fun. Pillman ends up getting the win in kind of a whatever throwaway match. Weird, like this match should have been the opener. Like, do this match in the opener. I guess they had to give the crowd a reprieve after the 40-minute barn burner with Johnny B. Bad and Flying Brian, but this could have easily been an opener match. Get everyone fired up, seeing somebody rappel, But it was a fun throwaway, cool match. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I got to warn you, this next part is an absolute fever dream. It's one of the craziest segments ever. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. So if you're listening to this on audio or however you're doing this, like, pull over, sit down, get prepared, because this gets weird as hell. Shivani lets us know that Paul Orndorff, a.k.a. Mr. Wonderful, is falling onto some hard times. And Orndorff is not feeling like Mr. Wonderful, and he's kind of been in the dumps. So we go backstage into like a pre-packaged vignette, and we see Orndorff pretty much having like a psychotic break in the locker room, and he just kind of keeps asking if he is still Mr. Wonderful, and he's losing sight of who he actually is, and he's starting to kind of break through the realms of space and reality itself. Now, in walks Gary Spivey, which Gary Spivey was a celebrity medium back in the day, kind of like a Miss Cleo kind of thing. Now, Gary Spivey is dressed exactly like the dog Carr in the movie Dumb and Dumber. And he's here to help Mr. Wonderful because he had a vision. And again, absolutely insane to watch. Absolutely insane to see this happening. And Orndorff's acting and Gary Spivey dressed like a poodle. I mean, this is cinema. So Spivey tells Orndorff that things are going to pass. Mr. Wonderful starts to affirm that he is indeed Mr. Wonderful. And with Gary's help and a million affirmations, Orndorff kind of turns the corner. And he starts to say that he is Mr. Wonderful. Now, this includes him kissing himself, kissing his forearms, giving a wet one to the mirror, but seems like Orndorff is okay aside from all the kisses. But so great work, Gary Spivey. TV title's up next. It is Diamond Dallas Page. Now, Diamond Dallas Page, well, he's not the TV champion. TV title is actually Renegade, but DDP is out first. DDP at this point comes out with Max Muscle and the Diamond Doll, aka his wife, and he's playing this like sleazy heel character who treats the Diamond Doll like trash, and very similar actually to Mark Marrow and Sable, where Marrow is kind of the heel who is jealous of the attention that Sable is getting and treats her like trash and makes her wear a potato sack and all that stuff. Similar situation here. DDP is he doesn't like the crowd likes the Diamond Doll, and every time she does something cool, he puts her down. He tries to make her put him up. Very, very similar storytelling, but she's actually, Diamond Doll is actually great at it. She really gets it. She plays it up very well. Max Muscle is, could not be more of a generic, big man type manager, but there you go. Now, Renegade is a horrific knockoff of the Ultimate Warrior. He dresses the same, he runs out the same, music's the same, everything is the exact same, moveset's the same, face paint's the same, but he just has nothing. Like, he looks boring, he doesn't have a good look, he like, they could have at least got a jacked, shredded guy. This guy's kind of doughy, but just a really bad imitation of the Ultimate Warrior. And they're not even trying to hide it. Again, like, he's running to the ring, he has face paint. Like, it could not be more of could not be more of just a flat out carbon copy in the worst possible way. Now, DDP, if you don't know DDP's backstory, like he got into wrestling really late. I want to say he was like 33 when he started wrestling, which is nuts. And DDP's awesome. Like you can tell, even in this match where he's not fully DDP yet, he is selling his ass off for Renegade. He sells a headbutt, sells a headlock. Like he's flying out of the ring. He's got great crowd control. Like he's really good at, kind of messing with the audience and just all of that. You can tell that DDP is a stud. And this is we're not even to all the cool DDP stuff, like AKA the rib tape. But DDP looks great in this match. DDP gets a little offense going and tells the Diamond Doll to flash the 10. She carries around these little signs that has 10 on them. When DDP does something cool, she puts them up. The crowd is not happy. Renegade goes to the top rope, but decides at the last second to attack Max Muscle for absolutely no reason. Why would he do that? But he goes to the outside, attacks Max Muscle. When he comes back in, Muscle holds his leg, and DDP hits the Diamond Cutter for the win. And we have a new TV champion. I would assume this is kind of like Ultimate Warrior is basically done and dusted at this point. So I would assume they probably saw the character and was just like, this is kind of played out. So this is probably them just writing him off. And they gave, great decision to go with DDP. He is so good as a heel. So he is your new TV champion. Next match is for the tag championships. I told you we'd have plenty of belts on the line, plenty of new teams and new characters, and this match has storytelling. At the absolute maximum. So, Sister Sherry, aka Sensational Sherry, is the manager of Harlem Heat. We all know Harlem Heat, Booker T, and Stevie Ray. Colonel Parker, no relation to Colonel Mustard, manages Dirty Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Bunk. Now, I will repeat that. Colonel Parker is managing Dirty Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Bunk. Now, Colonel Parker and Sister Sherry have some sexual tension. Parker has been courting Sherry since Sherry got hit during a match and she got a concussion. So after she got a concussion or bumped her head or whatever, she became enamored with the Colonel. And that's it. That is it. That is your scene. Let's head to the ring. I'll tell you this, Stevie Ray is huge. Stevie Ray is the biggest man I've ever seen. He is dwarfing Booker T, and Booker T is huge. Now, call me old school, but I think the best tag team wrestling is when the tag team has, like, a thing. They're a tag team. I hate whenever it's just two individual wrestlers just being their own individual characters, and then they put them together for a tag team. I hate that. I want the tag team to exist as a tag team. Like, I liked, the Headbangers. I like the Legion of Doom. I like, even like Bunkhouse Bunk and Dirty Dick Slater. They're both the exact same character. Like, they're both a theme. They're like, just like hillbilly, the Godwins were great. Booker T and Stevie Ray, like Harlem Heat is great. I love, I think tag teams should be a theme. I don't think it should be two individuals. Once we started seeing two individuals be mashed together as tag teams, that's when the tag team wrestling really, really, really took a fall. So this is a fantastic throwback to that era. This is a very physical match, old school tag team wrestling. A lot of corner work, a lot of holding the rope, a lot of isolating one of the people. Great stuff, and you wouldn't think it. But Bunkhouse Bunk and Slater are pretty good. Like, they're pretty good in the ring. They're solid. They're not just rest holds. They're pretty athletic. They're legitimate wrestlers. I'm really enjoying their work. This right now, like, these two teams, the way that they're kind of meshing is ironically because like how the whole setup is, but they're fantastic. Insane spot from Booker T here. He almost breaks his neck. Bunkhouse Bunk with some serious strength. I mean, he is, like, these people are huge. These are some very big hombres in the ring right now. Booker finally gets a hot tag to Stevie Ray. Booker was in there forever. He's got to be exhausted. He was taking some punishment. I mean, he was isolated the whole time. He was taking some serious shots, but finally gets Stevie Ray involved. Now, as the action, we're hitting the crescendo, ladies and gentlemen, as the action heats up in one ring, the action really heats up in the other ring. Colonel Parker and Sherry lock eyes and crawl up on the apron of the ring. Sherry starts to crawl over to the Colonel. Very seductive. They lock lips. They go at it. This isn't a peck on the cheek. This is full-on French kissing. Now, as this happens, the Nasty Boys make a run-in on the other side of the ring. So, kind of some shoddy camera work to even tell what's even happening. But the Nasty Boys attack Slater with a boot. Knock Slater out. Harlem Heat makes the cover for the win. Colonel and Sherry could care less. They are still locking lips as the 3 is counted. New tag champs, so Harlem Heat is your tag team champions. The two teams neither one of them are happy. The two teams get in there. They get Sherry away. They get Parker away. Obviously, Slater and Bunk are very sad that they have lost the tag titles. A lot of questioning going on here. Mean Gene is at the ramp. He's waiting for him. So Mean Gene's at the ramp. Bunkhouse and co. stop to talk to Mean Gene. Colonel tries to defend himself. Colonel lets everybody know that he is absolutely serious about that girl. Colonel loves her. No one wants to listen to the poor Colonel. He is sweating like a dog. He is absolutely drenched in sweat. So great work from everybody involved. But that was a fun match. That was a good match. Good storytelling. Everything was cool. So as of right now, that's probably the match of the night. Immediately, we're back to Mean Gene in the back with Arn Anderson. Mean Gene had to run a 60-yard dash there to get from the ramp to backstage, probably in about 20 seconds. So kudos to Mean Gene. Now, Arn said he's a nervous wreck, and he's got to trade fists, quote, with someone that he loves more than God himself. Woo! I mean, with all this love talk, like these two cats, Flair and Anderson, might just go to the ring and pull a Sherry and Colonel Parker. And it's time for Anderson and Flair. I'll tell you this, like, it's in Asheville, it's in North Carolina, like, this is Flair country. This is Horseman country. So that's helping this, but the match really does feel important. I know we talked earlier about how it's kind of a weird feeling match because there's no title, there's no, like, these guys seem to like each other, but as they are entering the crowd, everything, like, you can tell this is a very important match. And WCW, kudos to them, did a really cool thing here where the wrestlers are in the crowd. So they have some wrestlers out there, including Flying Brian, sitting in the crowd watching the match. They show a bunch of guys sitting there. So that even makes it more, like, that makes it even more of a big match where it's like the guys from the back said, no, I'm watching ringside. This is Ric Flair at his absolute best. Like, this is give me 60 minutes, make the hometown hero look good, but get the win. Anderson's getting a lot of offense early, but Flair is doing everything that we know him to do. Like, he is all the bag of tricks. Now, it's kind of weird because they mentioned Flair as an 11-time world champion. I'm so used to 16-time world champion, and the fact that we're sitting here and we still have 5 more Ric Flair title reigns coming. Like, he's 11-time world champion. It's crazy to hear. Flair is chopping. Like, these chops are crisp. All-time bad job from the ref here. Ref completely doesn't understand what's going on. Flair goes for 3 consecutive covers with his foot on the rope. I'm assuming Flair wanted the ref to catch him so Flair could do, like, the heel stuff, but the ref never gets the memo. So this all kind of messes up. But Flair ends up getting the figure 4 locked in. Moment of truth for the enforcer. Anderson rolls him over into the reversal we all know and love. Both men are absolutely exhausted, absolutely taxed. Flair gets up first, keeps working the leg. Anderson reverses it into a small cradle for the 2 count. The match has really picked up. Like, this is a match unlike Flying Brian and Johnny B. Bad, but it seems like a finish is coming at any moment. Like, every small package, every roll-up, every cover, every move, like, you're feeling like this is about to happen. Pillman jumps into the ring. So Pillman was watching ringside. He jumps in, attacks Flair. Anderson hits the DDT for the win. Now, this is fantastic storytelling because up until this point, Anderson has been kind of showing that he's not happy with Flair's underhanded tactics. And, we've seen very limited time with these two, but on the debut Raw, he wasn't happy with Flair holding the ropes. He talks about how Flair just kind of went off the path. He's doing things the wrong way. We know Flair is the dirtiest player in the game. So for Anderson to unknowingly win this underhanded, because he doesn't know Pillman attacked Flair, but beautiful storytelling. Like, this is very simple, where all of a sudden now, like, Anderson did get the big win. He did beat his former best friend. He did beat Ric Flair, but he did it underhanded. He did it in a dirty way, which kind of makes the win whatever, but it also is probably going to play into question Anderson's like morals and Anderson's ethics, even though Anderson didn't know. So really, really good storytelling here from the booker. We get a promo with our vignette with Sullivan setting up WarGames. Absolutely insane promo. I mean, it's just the weirdest, weird boy activity. Finally, we actually get the footage of the Giant destroying Hogan's motorcycle. Schiavone mentioned it, but we hadn't actually seen it. Why isn't he in this match again? Who the hell knows? All right, the Hulkamaniacs are backstage with Mean Gene, and they are absolutely camoed out of their mind. I mean, there is paint everywhere. You couldn't find this much paint in a Sherwin-Williams. Bananas amount of pageantry. The cage gets lowered. There's fireworks. Both teams are introduced. Some insane hailing froms when it comes to the Dungeon of Doom, as you can imagine. The match starts with Sting and Shark. A couple fun spots here. A great line from Schiavone, who says that he's a shark out of water. Zodiac comes out next. Sting was really just kind of whooping Shark's ass, but these 2-on-1 situation, they're putting it on the Stinger. When you really think about the match setup, the team with the handicap advantage should just dominate the match. Now, if you don't know the rules, every member has to enter, and then it becomes a match where the winner, I think you can only win by submission, or like, I think it's just submission. But so, like, right now, they can't pin Sting. They can't try and make Sting tap out. They have to just fight until every member is in there. Savage comes in next, so now it's 2-on-2. So Sting and Savage start to get the better of Shark and Zodiac, as you would expect. So now it's just basically a 2-on-2 tag match. Kamala's out, and then Luger. This part is weird, I'll admit, because you know there can't be a finish. So it takes all the drama out of it. These guys are just fighting. Like, it's just a brawl, which I guess, fall brawl, whatever. But it's just a good old-fashioned fight. There is absolutely no storytelling. There's absolutely no, like, oh, man, he might get pinned here. Oh, man, he might. You know the match can't end. So it is kind of, and people can't get eliminated. So it is kind of a weird, match setup, TBH. Luger accidentally hits Savage, which plays into Savage's paranoia about Luger. So now we start to see the Hulkamaniacs fall apart. Remember, Savage did not want Luger part of this, but Sting did, so Savage is not happy. Meng is the last man for the Dungeon of Doom, so now it is official, 2 minutes until we get Hulk Hogan. Hogan enters to a huge pop, per usual. He enters with sand or chalk or something in his hand and starts to blind all of the Dungeon of Doom. It's kind of funny, too, because since it is a surrender or submission match, and you look around and you're like, well, what the hell is Hogan going to do? Like, Hogan, like, Sting and Luger, fine, but like, what submission is Hogan just going to bust out? Well, we find out pretty quick, because Hogan slaps on the camel clutch on Zodiac, and he surrenders or submits, which is kind of the same thing. I'm not sure why those are the two options. So, boom, there you go. The Hulkamaniacs win. Now, remember, stipulation was if the Hulkamaniacs win, Hogan gets 5 minutes alone with the Taskmaster in the cage. The Taskmaster tries to run away, but Sting and security and everybody else gets him finally in the cage with Hogan. They lock the cage. Here we go. Sweet, sweet revenge. Hogan is putting it on the Taskmaster. I mean, he's giving it to him, and the Giant makes his way to the ring. The Giant with maybe the most athletic entrant into a ring I've ever seen. I mean, he's doing the most getting in there. It really shows you, like, you think about the Big Show, you think about, the Giant later on, you think about Paul White, whatever. He is an athletic freak. I mean, he's trim. He's jumping all over the place. He's pulling himself up. I mean, he is an absolute freak athlete, and you can tell. Giant grabs Hogan as the fans start to chant for Hogan, and just like that, the Giant breaks his neck, and I guess Hogan is dead. Okay, cool. Team Hulkamania hits the ring for the save. Hogan is still dead. The final image is Hogan lying dead in the ring after the Giant broke his neck, and they flash credits. That's it. The show, never seen that before, but there's credits after the show. Like Hogan is dying in the ring, and they are rolling credits, like executive producer, casting, costume director. I've never seen another thing that WCW did where it's like, who's even thinking about this? Like who's even thinking, like, yeah, roll the credits, show who the executive producer is. Like, think about how different that is than at this point how wrestling is being thought of. Wrestling is being thought of as this hyper kayfabe, like don't break the unwritten rules, don't move, don't show behind the curtain or any of that stuff. And like WCW is calling out WWF, reading results on air, showing the credits after a show. Like, all that's obviously on purpose. And it's crazy to think about, like, after an NFL game, you don't see credits. Like after an NBA Finals game, you don't see who the executive producer is. So pretty wild stuff, but just another example of how WCW is just thinking very differently about the product. They are thinking very differently about this whole thing. They're going about it, in some people's mind, probably about it the wrong way. They're probably going about wrestling in the worst possible way, where they're turning it into a show, which is what made them successful. But I could definitely see to the wrestling purists where they would hate it. But overall, pretty good pay-per-view. Like, overall, the B-Bad match was so long. Like, 40 minutes there is crazy. You would expect 40 minutes from Anderson and Flair, but 40 minutes to start the show with Johnny B. Bad and Brian Pillman for a U.S. title shot, not even for a belt, it just seemed out of place. Everything else was pretty chill. Like, the Cobra Pitbull match was cool, short, fun. The tag team match was awesome. Colonel Parker really kind of stole the show. He was a great character. DDP was fantastic. Got a couple title switches, which is always cool. And then the Fall Brawl, the Dungeon of Doom holds up the worst when you watch it back, because they're all just so hokey, and they're all like Zodiac, Shark, Kamala. Like, they have they're not going to win. Like, these guys are losers and goofs. There's no threat, especially against like Hulk Hogan and everybody. So. But it was cool to end on a cliffhanger of Hogan dying and Hogan having his neck broke by the Giant. So we'll see what happens with that. But tomorrow night, we have Nitro. So I'm excited to watch Nitro after the pay-per-view, see what, obviously we'll get an update on Hogan, and we'll see, I guess the Giant is next up for Hogan. We still have to deal with Luger. We'll get his title shot eventually. We have to see whenever Johnny B. Bad takes on Sting, what's going to happen with Colonel Parker. That's the real question. So good stuff overall. Good stuff on the pay-per-view, even though it doesn't have like that big championship match at the end of it. But overall, pretty solid stuff. So I will see you tomorrow night for WCW Monday Nitro.